Hey folks, Billboard chart guy. How's everybody doing today? Thrilled to have one of the first ladies of the Kirk Minahan show with us today, Mama Kay. Mama Kay,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Happy and pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. I know you're a big music fan and glad that you're able to take a few minutes. But before we start, how's life as a grandma?
It's keeping me busy. We're in the heart of summer where my daughter is working and I'm covering with the baby when she's working. So it's a lot of the stuff kind of comes right back to you, but at the same time, it's all new world at the same time. So it's keeping me
How
busy.
old how old is she?
She's 4 months.
4 months, yeah. So not sleeping a lot, I would assume.
She's actually sleeping a lot. She's
Okay.
sleeping through the night, like 10 to 12 hours every night. She's so good and she's so easy. And yeah,
Oh, that's great.
we're very, very blessed and very grateful that we don't have a lot of issues there.
Oh, good. Well, congratulations to you and the
Thank you.
family. That's great news. So, um, like I said, thrilled to have you with us. And I usually start the same way these episodes, trying to learn a little bit about your musical history, your musical story, how you got to where you are. Tell us about young Kira.
Oh boy. Well, I will say that my musical journey has had many different seasons, I would say, and really has informed my entire likes of in the music world, which is not very pigeonholed. I'm all over the place, and a lot of that has started because my parents at a young age were really big into theater and Broadway shows, so I was exposed to that very young and have an affinity for that. They also were, had their musical, they were kind of I call them the square pegs of the world. They had their Barry Manilow, their Barbara Streisand, the Frank Sinatra. That type of music was always playing in our house on 8 tracks in the car. So,
Right.
and I learned to enjoy and appreciate that. I didn't always love it especially as I hit my teen years, but it was always there, built around, just the music of my childhood, listening at home with my parents. But then I was, like a lot of kids of the 80s, I was introduced to a Sony Walkman very early on in, early 80s. I think I got
Yeah.
my first one. I am currently, 54 and, born in 1971. So like, 10 years old, I was getting my first Walkman, and it was the one that had the radio on it,
Oh,
which,
wow. Oh, that was a
yeah,
fancy one.
yeah, it was. I guess it was fancy. It was a Sony with a radio, and you'd have to really spend a very fine touch to get that station that you wanted on that little dial on the top
Right.
of the Walkman. And I would listen to countdowns and top 40. I think it was Zoo. It was a Zoo station in Boston when I was very young that I listened to. Um, and I was and then introduced to MTV,
Of
which my
course.
friend had. I did not have cable early on, and when I'd go over her house, we spent all day in her basement watching MTV videos. So the combination of those two brought me into pop music, really, of the 80s, and my obsession with kind of the charts and music, and really informed my future years working in radio. I found myself, it should have been a clue, where I was taking a piece of paper and I was writing down whatever MTV played. I would write it down. I'd write their whole hour down. I was doing that with the radio stations as well, and I was learning which songs they were playing, how often, and I was just doing it on my own.
Wow.
And I don't know to what purpose. At that time, it wasn't like I was using it for anything. It was kind of an obsessive compulsive thing to just write down the different songs that came on.
So you writing these down and then maybe going to the record store and purchasing 45s or
Nope.
cassette sing? No. Okay.
Nope. I had some, my first albums, I really didn't have, like, I had a record player. My brothers had a record player. They were playing, like, kind of more novelty songs. It seemed like my brother had Short People playing on his 45 a lot, or Earache My Eye was a song I remember them playing, which I believe, I can't even remember who sang.
I
feel
don't
like
remember that one.
it was like a comedy thing. So my one brother, he would play his 45. I kind of skipped the 45 generation as far as music purchasing.
Okay.
I had some albums. I know I had Grease. I know I had some other soundtrack albums. I had some random album that had all the national, the what do you call it? The Star Spangled Banner, like the, I don't know why I remember this, but I did. So I had some really weird stuff. It wasn't until the cassette era. Oh, and then my parents had the 8 tracks. Right. So cassette era is really where my purchasing of music came in.
What was the first cassette you went out and bought?
It's very random, but my first cassette that I asked for and I got, well, I asked for about 5 probably for Christmas, and I got 1, and they picked Asia's Alpha to buy me.
Now that's not the first Asia album, is it?
No, I don't. I think it's their second.
Okay.
But it's like the heat of the moment, and that was my first cassette tape. Okay. And I got a cassette player at the same Christmas, so that I was off and running at that point. I mean, I did get, people would give me, I think I had the Men at Work album, so I still played that on my record player, or my parents' record player. But as soon as I could get my hands on cassettes, that's when I started going towards cassettes. And I know that's, it's not the cool thing to collect in this day and age, albums, and the vinyl, that's still where all the, the history is. But
yeah,
I had some, I went back and bought some vinyl of some of my favorite artists, eventually in the 80s, just to have them. But, it was me and that cassette Walkman listening to my cassettes and the countdowns. And so then I was off and running there with the pop music, and just to fast forward a little bit, I ended up going into college, and I switched up and was working in radio there as a DJ, and I was doing a lot of modern rock, alternative, progressive rock. So I got into that scene for a while, and then I went to work in country music, and I got into that scene. So basically what happened, and I did have artists that I loved and obsessed over in the 80s, but ever since then, it's really been more about songs that I liked, and all the genres are fair game. I just didn't end up on any one genre necessarily. I will listen to a mix of everything, and I just like music that I like.
So go back to your college radio days, and you said you listened to alternative, or who were some of your favorite artists?
Gosh. I mean, I did a very eclectic show called Moon Kitty's Litter Box. That was my radio show.
Okay.
And I'll give you a little. It was take a fresh step into Moon Kitty's Litter Box with a meow mix of your favorite alternative music. So that was my tag.
Wow. All right. Not bad.
That was my little hook. And I played, everything from the Smiths to The Cure, to REM, that type of stuff, to grunge, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots. I got into I loved some industrial hardcore stuff. I loved Ministry, 9 Inch Nails. I loved more of the dance with Erasure and
Depeche Mode
and stuff like that. Right. And so everything but the girl. I had even early Gin Blossoms, The Alarm,
Yeah.
Psychedelic Furs, Smithereens. We kind of covered everything, and it's just what I was feeling and what I would mix, together and decide I wanted to play.
Yeah.
It was a great free flowing, very broad category of music that all fell under alternative of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I've mentioned this before. REM is a top 5 or 6 band of mine. I discovered them right as their first album broke, Murmur,
Yep.
and listened all the way through, probably, religiously through Monster, which came out in '95. And I respect the hell out of them, as obviously they broke up
Yes.
in 2011, and they've avoided reuniting.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can imagine the millions of dollars that have been thrown at them. So I respect them greatly for kind of sticking to their guns for sure. But they were a very important band for
Yeah.
me. And later on, in the '80s, I was late to the game, but The Cure also.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
love The Cure, and that album that had Just Like Heaven and Hot 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 and Why
Mm-hmm.
Can't I Be You. I'm forgetting the name of the album, but just really, really good
Well,
stuff.
I think it's funny that you picked out those two bands that you just said, because I had two sign-off songs during my tenure on that radio show. And for the first year, it was, or the first half of it, I would say is more than a year, was The Love Cats by The Cure was my
Okay,
sign-off song. It went with the, Moon
the
Kitty,
theme, yeah.
the theme. And then it was always the last song I played to sign off on my show. And the second one was End of the World as We Know It by REM. So you hit both of those sign off songs for that era of my early 90s alternative
Yeah.
music
And
world.
by the way, that Cure album is Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me.
Yes,
And that
Kiss Me.
came out in '87. I just looked it up. Yeah. That was going to bother me for the rest of the day.
And it's funny because those are songs and albums that I did not listen to in the 80s at all. I was heart of my Duran Duran and Steve Winwood obsession of the 80s. So I didn't find it till I was in that genre and went back and discovered a lot of that music.
So then you were a big Back in the High Life gal.
I was an everything Steve Winwood fan. I
Yeah.
mean, it was I did discover him probably even before that. It was probably his Arc of a Diver album.
Right. Valerie,
Uh,
right? Wasn't Valerie on
Valerie
that?
and
Yeah.
Why I See a
Well,
Chance, I think, was on that
yeah,
album.
that's right. When You See a Chance. Yeah.
And those and then fell in love with him in a very weird time where all my contemporary friends were into Michael Jackson and Billy Idol and Journey and Madonna and those types of artists and don't get me wrong, I was also a mega Duran Duran fan,
Right.
D2 all the way, but I also had this weird, kind of unique love of this, at that time, older, kind of white R&B singer who came out of the '70s and Traffic and Spencer Davis and just loved his voice, and it spoke to me at a time in my adolescence going into teenagehood that I guess it would be my rebellion in a weird way, like
Right.
from the usual, safer than I would say a lot of people's rebellion, but
Yeah. Yes,
just
I would say so.
I just really gravitated to him, and he was fantastically talented with his. He wrote and produced and played almost all the instruments in his first couple albums. It was like a one-man show, and if you listen to it, it's just amazing to think that he did all the studio work on that by himself.
Amazing. Yeah. And I know you know this, but just for the audience, Steve Winwood was 15 years old
Yeah.
when he did the lead vocals on "Give Me Some Lovin'" with the
Yeah.
Spencer Davis
Yeah,
group.
he joined Spencer
Amazing.
Davis at 14, and
14. Okay.
yeah, I mean that song might have been cut when he was 15, but yeah,
Right.
he definitely joined the band at 14, and he was discovered. He was working with like Bo Diddley and a couple of just big names that they couldn't believe when they would hear this little scrawny, white boy from Birmingham belting out like Ray Charles. It
Yeah.
kind of got him some huge fame early on in England.
Yeah, I saw him on that Back in the High Life tour at Madison Square Garden. That was probably late '86 or early '87,
Yes, I saw
and just tremendous show. I mean, and he covered the whole discography from Spencer Davis forward. It was
Traffic and
the Blind Faith with
Blind Faith,
Clapton. Yeah,
Clapton. Yep.
really good stuff.
Those were. I discovered those after I discovered, when I discovered him. I went back and those were some of the obviously the LPs that I bought, the vinyls I bought because they didn't exist in cassette tape back then. So
Right.
that's when I went and got all his stuff, back and I was happy to have seen him several times now. I didn't see him early on though. I didn't see. It's kind of the irony is I've seen hundreds of artists now live, but I didn't ever see the ones I loved in my early years because my parents didn't take me to concerts. It wasn't like it wasn't an expense that they were going to spend. They didn't care about, taking me. It's a little different of a generation. And it wasn't until, I did see some in high school on my own dime.
Who was your first concert?
Oh gosh, I think it was, I was trying to think of this. I can't remember which one came first. It was the same summer. It was at the Old Great Woods. I think it was either, I definitely know the first three I saw because they were the same summer. It was the summer that I finally started buying tickets for concerts, that I had my own money that I could actually go. And I was going with friends. I believe the first one was Bon Jovi with I can't remember who opened up for them, but it was Bon Jovi.
Okay.
And then I also saw that summer Richard Marx.
It don't mean nothing.
It don't mean nothing. I think my girlfriends from work all wanted to go see him, and we were all sitting there, and they're like, "Let's buy tickets." And you know where I was spending my money, and up until that point, going to Bruins games and Celtics games. I was a much bigger sports fan, and that's what my parents would buy me tickets for. So this was kind of when I started to like wanting to start going to concerts. I just know they weren't going to go with me, so they weren't going to spend the money. And then I think the other one I saw that year was within a year or two. I saw Weird Al and the Monkees.
Okay,
so
that's quite a double bill.
That is three different types. Types of music, right?
So let me give you a quick quiz. I'm sure you know it, but who played the famous guitar solo on "Don't Mean Nothing" by Richard Marx? Do you remember?
Oh, that's I do, but this is the difference between a you and me, or a Kirk and me, is that I remembered this at some point in my life, and then I've just brain dumped so much of that information out of my brain. So I just can't wait. I can. I remember he was in the video, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yes, I know. Don't mean nothing. Oh, you know what? I could make some guesses and they would probably be wrong. So I don't even want to embarrass myself. But I remember it, and I'll kill myself.
Joe Walsh.
Oh, well, it's funny you should say that because I was going to say him, but he also played for when Steve Winwood came out with his big album with the Back in the High Life.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't, he finally got some studio musician, or he actually took help on his things. Joe Walsh was one of the guys he called in and, was on his album.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he was, he kind of went from having no one on his album to having some huge names on his big big hit. He had Shaka Khan. Joe Walsh was on Split Decision, the song Split Decision on that album. James Taylor.
Right?
Yeah,
James
he was
Taylor,
backup for Back in the High Life. Chaka Khan was backup for Higher Love. Nile Rodgers played guitar on that album. What's his face? Robbie Kilgore played keyboards. So he went from doing everything himself for like 3 albums, and then he just got like a murderer's row of studio musicians to come in on that album, which was in the Back of the High Life album.
Yeah.
Yes,
we could probably do an episode on Steve Winwood, it sounds like. So we'll save that for the next time.
That's my rabbit hole artist of my 80s. But like I said, I moved on to other, I loved a lot of artists, but I didn't really know, I couldn't tell you like that type of stuff on a lot of them. It was more about the music and the songs that I just liked. And that kind of is where I am now. I loved my favorite band in the 80s was U2 and the Eagles.
Yep.
And then now it's probably Zach Brown. So we just have I just kind of.
You're all over the board.
I'm all over the place. There's not a, what do they say that I'm a master of none. I'm what's the saying go?
I know what you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
What's your most memorable or favorite concert of all time?
There's been so many. Because once I started working in radio, I made up for all the lost time I didn't get to go in the 80s and in the 90s and pretty much the 90s. I spent most of my life seeing live music and meeting, artists and interviewing artists. And that was my big, time. So there's so many little snippets because sometimes it would just be a little studio session that I was sitting in on. It wasn't a concert, but it was amazing.
Well, give me a moment. Give me a song. Give me a.
Oh gosh, there's some concert. I will say, and this is again, we're going down another pathway. Garth Brooks put on one of the best concerts I've ever seen. Like his back in the 90s when he was touring, and I just saw him again on his his big stadium tour, and it was a bit different this time just because he's older and he doesn't quite have the legs he used to have. But that was just a smile from ear to ear for the entire show of the 90s. And I loved that. But then there's stuff where I got to sit in where, like a little radio gig where the Nelson brothers were playing their dad's music and hit their music acoustically in a friend's living room, which was just amazing. You hear really, and you think of the big, their long blonde hair and, but those guys were supremely talented artists. And when they just sat there, and this was years later, obviously, and their hair was short, and they were, doing some of their dad's catalog. May he rest in peace. Yeah. That was just fabulous to be a part of that, and then to talk to them about it and just have those kind of conversations. I mean, there's a myriad of country artists. There's a myriad of alternative bands that I got to see. I forget. Well, it wasn't singing, but Henry Rollins from Black Flag. He did a speaking concert, speaking tour, what do you call spoken word?
Right.
Absolutely one of the most amazing 2 hours of my life, watching that in a small bar concert venue.
My knowledge of Henry Rollins is based on a Beavis and Butthead episode where they were watching him do the song Liar. If you remember that song. And they were like, liar.
I mean, I don't think I would put myself way up on the Black Flag fan list. It wasn't like my favorite kind of music, but I went to this particular event, which was a spoken word where he just talked and told stories and poignant messages for 2 hours, and hit me at a very as I was graduating college, and it was impactful to say the least. I saw I saw the Eagles at the Meadowlands when they did their Hell Freezes Over tour. That was a fantastic show. I was
It was
happy
like
to
94,
94. I
95.
was right out of college. So I graduated in 93. So it would have been, I probably was living in the city at that time, or I just moved from there to DC and then came back up for the show. It was a great show. I never got to see U2, which still to this day is, if I could rewind, I would go. My brother got to go and I was so mad, but I was too young at the time. My parents wouldn't let me go. I'm still bitter about it. It's just, there's a lot of, I've got to interview, I think I mentioned this on Minute Fandom. It's not a concert. I did interview Kurt Cobain, his last trip to New York before he died in April. This, I think, was November, because he played the Roseland Ballroom, which I worked for Westwood One, Unistar Westwood One, which was on that corner, 53rd and Broadway, and next to the late where Letterman was. It was kind of a great spot to work, and he had come in to do, he was doing the circuit of just kind of interviews on that trip, and they'd always come into our studio because it was right there. So that was an interesting.
That's an incredible memory and story to have, I'm sure.
Yeah, he was a little strung out, not gonna lie. Wasn't the easiest of interviews. I interviewed the Gin Blossoms in that same studio, and they got in a full-on fight during the interview because I brought up the Levi's commercial that they had given the song, which I'm not going to recall the name of the song right now, but they put it in the Levi's. It became big hit from this Levi's commercial. And when it came out, when I was talking about it with them or asking them about it, the guitar player decided that was the moment to tell him that the lead singer, that he was not a fan of that decision and that he felt like they sold out. And it was news to the two of them. Just started having a mega argument. Now, these were all recorded interviews, so they weren't live. So I'm sure that was cut heavily from wherever it ended up being used. But that was an awkward moment there. So that was.
It sounds it. So let me start wrapping this up, and I got one more musical question for you. And I know you're an 80s gal, so I figured I'd ask you this. Give me your 5 essential 80s songs.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Desert Island, you're going to have a cassette with all these 5 songs.
Jeez,
what are they?
You needed to shoot me this question like 2 days ago.
No.
All right.
Top of your head. Stream of conscience.
And it's funny because one of them that just popped to my head, I just was talking about this song because it wasn't a big hit at the time, but I have to have Phil Collins in the Air Tonight, because if I can't do those air drums, then what are we even doing here?
Okay. I've heard that before. Okay.
I gotta take a Duran Duran song. I mean, they were also an obsession. I would say of their song, gosh, there's a couple. I could go like I like New Moon on Monday is like always one of my favorite ones of theirs, but I think I would probably go with The Reflex.
Okay.
Because it was big and it was impactful in, my musical memory life. I'm trying 80s. Okay, so Steve Winwood, obviously. I'm going with Finer Things.
That's
my
a great
favorite
song.
That's my favorite Steve Winwood song by far. So that one's going in. So now I got 2 more wild cards. Yeah. So you got to have a one-hit wonder. I feel like you have to have a one-hit wonder because that is so big in the 80s.
That's a fair.
So if I were to go with one of my one-hit wonders, it would either be 99 Luftballons or maybe Putting on the Ritz. Or no, I'm just thinking.
Oh no, I'm trying to remember. Was that Taco? Was that
yes,
the guy's
Taco?
name?
Yes, Putting on the Ritz.
Right.
That's just a fun 80s, so cheesy one
Right.
hit wonder that went to the moon and back, and then you never heard from him again.
I couldn't believe I heard that on the radio because my only reference to that song was from Young Frankenstein. If you
Yes,
remember the
yes. Oh,
monster
yes. Where
singing.
he put on the
Yeah.
wrist.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe that's why it's still, because that's one of my favorite movies.
All right. So
Yeah,
I'm going to count those two as one. So you got one
Okay.
more to go.
Okay, all right, and then oh gosh, 80s, 80s. There's so many. I know. I mean, like everybody would be like, take a Michael Jackson, take a Prince song, take a Madonna song, but you know what? Those things didn't really. I liked them. They were timely. I mean, it's kind of like if I think of 80s and like I go to the dance, what song did they always play that I always wanted to dance to? It'd be something like Moni Moni by Billy Idol.
Right.
Like that reminds me of the 80s. Like the girls would run out on the dance floor and then you'd do the repeat chorus back and get laid. I'm not going to
Right. Yeah, this is a PG show.
It's a PG show. But that's what I think of. I mean, they're not the best songs of the 80s. They're all of those, some of those, but I feel like if I was time capsuling the 80s.
Okay. This is not a bad group. And I have to tell you, and I swear it's the God's honest truth, one of these songs that you mentioned is waiting on deck for me to call into Kirk for a question.
Oh, really? Which one?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm not going to tell.
oh, you probably don't want to give it up.
Right. Yeah. So you'll have to listen to KNS.
Is it the Phil Collins one?
Okay. We're going to be moving on now. And and on that note, I'm going to thank you for joining me. I really appreciate all the information. This is a lot of fun. We could chat all day about this, especially the 80s stuff. It's great having you on. And before I let you go, do you have any upcoming third chair appearances lined
I have not been scheduled. No, I don't. I was scheduled back in June. Dave had me on the calendar, but that was the week that Kirk was. I forget what he was doing. Chicago, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. He went. He was out of town, so that got canceled. And since then he left, and haven't heard from Justin yet. But I'm willing to go back in whenever.
I'm sure you will, and I enjoy when you're in there. It's a lot of fun. So,
thank you.
So I want to thank you again. I want to thank Kirk and the Minifan Network, Menners, of course, for all the support and the help. It's great doing this show, and I hope to talk to everybody real soon. Thanks, and have a good day.